Good afternoon. I'm trying to think when the last time any of you saw someone in a kilt, and was it the movie Braveheart with Mel Gibson? How many of you have seen the movie Braveheart? Okay, sometimes when I'm doing a talk, then I actually talk about Mel Gibson, who had a terrible Scottish accent. But there's a part in the movie where he's trying to get his army to follow him to fight the English, which we still do, actually. So he's got a small number of people, and he's trying to convince them to take this chance and not to have any regrets and to take the opportunity. So sometimes when I'm speaking to sports people, I quote Mel Gibson riding up and down on his horse with his face painted, because what he said to all his army was, fight and you may die, run and you may live at least for a while. But when you're lying on your deathbed, many years from now, would you give up all the days from this day to be able to come back and to tell your enemies, you can take our lives, but you'll never take our freedom? And he was trying to convince them, don't be lying in your bed thinking, oh, I wish I'd stayed and fought and Scotland would be independent. Well, we actually voted 2 years ago for no independence. So anyway, that was Mel Gibson, and I'm going to very, very quickly, try not to talk too quickly, about the organisation of one of these events that Igor mentioned. So this is me. That was me. We welcomed everyone to Scotland's with what we were trying to involve people in our culture and our heritage, because it's not just about sport. And the band above the games is the spirit unites. That's what we use in ICG. So it's not just about sport, it's about the spirit of everyone coming together and meeting and exchanging cultures, etc., etc. So sport is part of it, but the cultural side and the uniting of spirits from all over the world is the main theme for it. I used to be a teacher, but I'm all right now. And I then moved into sports coaching. So I'm qualified to coach in a number of sports, not cycling. And I then moved into sports management and eventually became the equivalent of a director of sport and recreation in my city. So way back in 2000, Hamilton, Ontario were hosting the Millennium Games. And as part of the Millennium Games, they decided to invite all the Hamiltons of the world, of which there are 27. So an invite appeared on my desk to come to these games. Never heard of them before. And I managed to convince my mayor that this was an opportunity for children to go abroad, to compete in an international arena, and to experience all the different cultures. So we went to the games in Hamilton. I must say that the captain of the boys' football team, 15, went on to play professional football for Glasgow Rangers, and the captain of the girls' football team won 175 caps for the Scottish ladies' football team. So we are talking about a very, very high level of competition in the games. We went to Cleveland, we went to Coventry, and in 2006 the council then decided to get rid of me as the Director of Leisure and Recreation, and to retire me and to bring me back to involve myself in the bidding for the games and the organisation of the games over the next 4 years. So I went to Reykjavik to meet the ICG people, and I'll pause there again. We had a girl in the team that year who played badminton. She was the only non-Asian girl who reached the semi-finals. She is now GB number 1. She's ranked 17 in the world and she's going to the Olympics. So that's the standard of competition throughout the Games. Anyway, we put in a bid at the Games in San Francisco in 2008. I became the Games Director, and for 3 full years of my life, I organised Lanarkshire 211. Went to Athens in Greece, went to Manama. Couldn't work one of these. Right, Samuel. We're still in Manama. Don't go away, don't go away. Okay. As part of our bid, our city started to put signs up in all their big buildings, all the large council buildings, so that everyone in Lanarkshire was aware of what we were trying to do. This is the townhouse in Hamilton. Yeah. No. Do you want to just change whenever I tell you, Igor? I could do some Highland dancing while we're waiting. Dance about. Okay. This was the First Minister of Scotland at the time was Alex Salmond. Chris Hoy, I'm sure all of you cyclists know about him. He's from Scotland. We've now got a velodrome named after him in Glasgow. And this was our idea of who we would bring to Lanarkshire. 80 cities, it turned out to be 78, 40 different countries. These were the numbers of people. Each city could bring a maximum of 24 people, the city rep being the mayor. Logistically, all arriving more or less in the one day, and all departing on the one day. We decided to use schools. We didn't have a university, so we decided to convert 3 of our high schools to house teams for the week. And this was our programme. As I said, arrivals day. The next day was a practice day. In the evening was an opening ceremony. Competition day. M&D's is a theme park we had, so in the evening we managed to convince M&D's to close the theme park to the public and allow us to use the park for the evening. Competition day takes you up to the quarter-finals, and then on the last day we have the semi-finals in the morning, finals in the afternoon, a closing ceremony, and then everybody departs. These were the names of our venues. Those were the sports that we chose. The host city gets to pick the sports. We started 2 years before putting squads together because we wanted to be able to compete in finals on the last day. As the host city, we sneaked ahead of everyone else who didn't know what the sports were by compiling squads so that our host city would have all the people in Lanarkshire supporting them on the last day. These are just some pictures of the various places: 50-metre pool, track and field, football outside. A private health club gave us the use of their tennis courts. Water Sports Centre hosts the World Rowing Championships. We had sailing there, and remarkably, over 3 days in Scotland, one of the days they couldn't sail because there was no wind. It was the only day that year there was no wind in Scotland. Golf on a nice golf course in Hamilton. A brand new £32 million regional facility, full-size soccer pitch. We hosted the judo there and the volleyball in one of their facilities. Lanarkshire is made up of North and South Lanarkshire, a bit like Korea, and I suppose a bit sometimes politically they don't gel together, but they came together for the games. So we split the venues between north and south. That's a kind of, up the top there you see the map of Scotland. Lanarkshire's kind of in the middle. So our ports of entry, as Igor suggested, were Glasgow Airport or Edinburgh Airport. And the minute those teams arrive there, then the host city picks up the cost. We also tried, because I had been at 8 games before, I had seen what we would call best practice, what to do and what not to do. So we decided, I'll come out here. Park was going to be the hub. So the accommodation venues, everyone would be bussed in there 5 miles and then would be bussed out to the venues. And if you were a spectator at the venues, you could get a bus back into the hub, then back out to another sports venue. So that everyone could move about in a circle very, very quickly. Some of the games we've been at, Bahrain, it's an hour to get to the football, and then you wait an hour for the bus to come back for you. Or they gave each team 1 bus and thought that was a great idea, a team bus. But if you've got a team of athletes, and some are at track and field, and some are at volleyball, and some are at football, and some are at swimming, then 1 bus just doesn't work. So we decided to have this idea of a central hub to bus people in and out, with a couple of hospitals on standby, and all the VIPs were in a hotel down at the hub, so everything was very, very close. Logistically, this is what we had to do. So I chaired all of these groups. I had been at 8 games and had a vision of how I could see it all coming together, and all I needed was the city to give me €2.5 million and about 300 or 400 staff whose job it was to deliver these games. So accommodation, we used these schools. We converted them into dormitories like that. We spent €400,000 getting a company who employed adults with special needs or disabilities to make these beds, and to make them so that we could pull the top bed off and make it into 2 single beds. Mattresses, pillows, beds were all washed and cleaned at the end of the games, and as part of the legacy, they were distributed to children's homes, single parents, and all types of people who were in need. So nothing of the €400,000 we spent went to waste. It was all given back out to the people in Lanarkshire. Catering, big issue, 40 different countries, various religions, various types of food for various types of people. We had sports nutritionists who came in to advise us on the type of food our athletes would need, 15-year-olds, for breakfast, for lunch and for dinner. I'm sure you've all been at events where you get a packed lunch and you ask what it is and you say, oh, I don't like that, because it's not what you were wanting or they've run out. We came up with a system where in the morning the lunch menu was on a television screen. Oh, that's all right. There. Lunch menu was on a TV screen, so people in the queue for their breakfast picked their lunch. They picked the lunch, they got a coloured band. When they then went to the various 9 venues to compete, they then went to the catering venue and gave the band back that denoted the type of lunch they wanted, and they got the proper lunch. And we got the bands back. So we had very, very little wastage in lunches, and all the athletes got the lunch that they looked for. Transport, massive issue for us. Our view was that if you get the accommodation right, the transport right, and the catering right for 15-year-olds, then the games will be great. So transport, we had massive buses. I don't know what they're called in Slovenia, but the ones downstairs and upstairs. We double-deckers, yeah, we call them double-deckers. So we had large buses that transported everyone in and out to the venues. We had special cars on call in case of emergencies. We had some cars for the VIPs if Igor or the president had to be somewhere very quickly. They gave me a nice logoed car for a month, which was great. So transport was important for us. Catering, we've covered. Security, 15-year-olds, as you can imagine, very, very important for us. So each floor in the school and the accommodation was patrolled by volunteers. No one could get in unless they had a badge, strictly adhered to. So even if I tried to get into a school or a venue without the badge that showed who I was, picture, etc., I was refused. Really, really strict with adults and children because of the AIDS situation. Entertainment. The biggest entertainment for 15-year-old boys and girls, as you can imagine, is there a Slovenian word for hormones? Hormones, yeah. 15-year-old boys and girls get together, the hormones go crazy. So they just want to be with each other all the time. So there wasn't an awful lot of entertainment required. There was a lot of security issues in the evening to keep them apart. But in terms of networking and meeting, within a day or a day and a half, they know everybody. The boys know the girls from all these different countries. The boys play football against another team from another country. They introduce them to the girls from their city. Then all of a sudden, it just takes off for the whole week. So the only entertainment we had to give them was the one night at the theme park. Worked very closely with the police. We decided to keep the police presence very low-key. So we had loads of police walking about, community police, who just kept an eye on things, never any trouble. Fire people came in, gave us certificates to make sure the schools were able to accommodate people who slept there overnight as opposed to pupils who went to school there and then left for the evening. As Igor has mentioned, in terms of VIPs, we've got mayors from all the cities, we've got sponsors, we've got committee members. We have to look after them. There's certain things we have to do. There's the opening ceremony. There's a flame gets lit, like the Olympic flame. There's an oath gets read by the athletes. An oath gets read by the referees. The theme of the opening ceremony is Ode to Joy. We decided to have that sung in Gaelic by a Gaelic choir. And loads of things that you have to do in order to meet the requirements of ICG. Language. An issue. So we had a company called Language Line, 24-hour, 24/7. We employed them to be at the end of a phone just in case an athlete or a coach or someone was having a difficulty with one of our volunteers or one of our venues, and it was crucial that we got someone to speak to them in their own language. So we just employed a company to be there for the duration of the games. Tourism opportunities. A number of parents and supporters came early. We had packages for them. A number of parents and supporters stayed on later after the games and kept their kids back to go and visit Scotland. So we tried to market our place, Lanarkshire in the first instance, and then Scotland in the biggest sense of the word as a natural tourist venue. NHS, that stands for National Health Service. So in Scotland that's free. So everyone who came to us, if they needed to see a doctor, we had doctors on standby. We had games doctors, we had games dentists, we had physiotherapists at all the venues. Our national stadium, Hampden Park, they allowed us free use of their sports injuries clinic. So anyone who was injured in a football match who was struggling but had a chance of making a game the next day, we would take them into the sports injuries clinic in Glasgow to look after them, all free of charge. Marketing, we'll show you some of the stuff we did, but we marketed it both Lanarkshire-wide and throughout the whole of Scotland so that everyone knew what we were trying to do. And insurance, it was round about the time of the volcanic eruption in Iceland. I don't know if you remember where the volcano erupted, flights were all over the place. So we had a meeting and decided that our games could be cancelled because no one can get to Scotland. Or torrential downpours that just wipes away every outdoor sport we have. So we paid, I seem to remember, £50,000 for an insurance policy to cover us for the cost of the €2.5 million. And volunteering, it's been mentioned today, and we were the same. We went out and spoke to groups. We attracted all types of volunteers. We tried specifically to try to bring in happy, mature faces. That was the phrase we used. We wanted our older people in the community to feel as though they could become part of it by meeting 15-year-old athletes from all over the world, explaining about the history of Scotland, the history of Lanarkshire, and becoming friendly with them. So we had loads and loads of volunteers who were happy, mature faces, and as it was mentioned this morning, to smile costs nothing. So we insisted that as part of our induction programme, where we gave them training in customer care, we gave them training in health and safety, we gave them basic first aid training, that the athletes and the coaches would go away knowing that our volunteers had looked after them. Community involvement, we've got schools and colleges and universities out with, were interested in what we were doing. They were interested in their students coming along, sitting in meetings, working with us as volunteers. Obviously the sports clubs helped out in each of the individual sports. I haven't mentioned any of the sports tournaments because they were organised by the staff, my staff at the time, who were, I don't know, the football development officer ran the football tournament. So all our sports events were organised by professional people, and they ran like clockwork. So there's no point in talking about the actual sports themselves. They were great. You know, I was asked to talk about the logistics of organising this massive event. The two councils, the two cities got involved. Everybody who worked for a city could take a day off to help as a volunteer, and it was part of their remit to deliver the games. Volunteer groups, as you would imagine, and volunteer forums were set up to discuss schools, try to become or to make joint partnerships with cities who were coming from various countries. And in fact, I think some of the schools in Lanarkshire still keep in touch with Igor and our colleague Zlatko in terms of a joint initiative between the schools. We had working groups who raised money. The councils wanted to, the councils said that they would support the games up to £1 million, so just over that in euros. They would pay for anything up to that amount, but they wanted us to raise money to try and offset some of those costs. So we had working groups set up to raise funds. We had a group of people who came forward, businessmen who became supporters of the International Children's Games. They had a badge, they had their own logo, and they ran events and organised fundraising activities to attract money where they could offset some of the costs that we incurred in delivering the games. And support in kind. We mentioned that earlier. Some companies couldn't give us money, but some companies like, he just dived down to something just at the side here. We had an American company in Lanarkshire called Cisco, an IT company. They couldn't give us money, they could give us staff. So their staff set up free Wi-Fi in all the school accommodation venues. But they also gave us, at that time, 4 years ago, flip cameras, which we managed to have 2 at every sports venue, where we gave them to staff. We asked the staff to walk about, take HD quality videos. One of these takes 2 hours, and then when it finished, they just go back and download it to a central venue. Somebody in there would very quickly go through, look at some of the exciting things that happened, some goals that had been scored or whatever. And by the time the kids went back to their venues in the evening for their meal, then they had edited stuff and they'd put them on the tellies in a loop so that they could watch themselves having competed that day. So stuff like that. We attracted cars, I've mentioned, water. I know it was mentioned this morning. We also decided to have no plastic bottles. So our games had no plastic bottles at all, other than an official ICG water bottle. So we had barrels, or bowsers they're called in Scotland, with, you know, like we saw at the hospital yesterday, 500 litres of fresh water every day, all over the football pitch, all over the track and field. At the changing rooms, we had pipes that came out to taps with logos to say it was the game's water, fresh water. So we had a water company who provided all that for us for nothing. Communication strategy, it was robust right from the very beginning. In fact, I think we spent too much of the budget right at the very beginning in letting everyone know what we were trying to achieve. We had badges, we had pens. We had whisky, ICG whisky. We had mugs, all sorts of stuff going about Lanarkshire before the game so that everyone would know exactly what we were doing. Extensive media coverage. We had Lanarkshire TV. We had our own TV station, so every day there was something about ICG, and obviously that would attract national and international coverage. Capitalising on celebrity political supporters. I've shown you Alex Hammond, Chris Hoy. There's a couple of names coming up shortly. We had our own website, with our own online TV, and we had a bus. So this was what we had going out and about on a monthly basis in Lanarkshire. The girl here, athlete, hot on the heels of legendary father's footsteps. There was an athlete who ran for Great Britain in the European Championships called Brian Whittle, and just as he took off in the third leg of a 4x400, his shoe came off. So he ran the 400 metres without his shoe, and I think they won silver or gold, and this was his daughter who'd made our team. This is Motherwell Football Club, same division as Glasgow Celtic, Glasgow Rangers. They agreed to give us the stadium to host the opening ceremony, of which you will see more. A bit of a slope in that pitch, yeah. The pitch slopes, it's just so uneven. It's just that's not the picture. That's supposed to be. If you look at the stand's level and the pitch is slanted. So we put the stage for the opening ceremony in that stand, and we filled the main stand on the right, the main stand here where the camera is, and we filled a third of the other side with spectators. And they then said, you can't stand in the grass, but there's a walk-in of athletes like you do in the Olympics. It takes exactly 45 minutes because I timed it. So they asked us to cover the pitch, so we had to cover the pitch, which you'll see in the video at the end. And you'll also see the seats on the left-hand side are empty. But we had the logistical problem of 1,500 athletes being walked into the stadium and then going to sit down somewhere. So in the top left-hand corner, the athletes come in, and then they walk down to the halfway line, and they walked across to the main stand, and they walked up the other side, and then they walked in front of that stand. And as a team then came out, the team who'd been out nipped in between them to go to the seats in the stand. So as that we just had this kind of circle of athletes being shown to the crowd, and then making their seats into the stadium. So you talk about challenges. 2 challenges: a phone call the day before a team arrives to say, we have an athlete whose religion does not allow him to take public transport on a Saturday between sunrise and sunset, and he's in the volleyball team. Can you help? Well, so he's in accommodation that's 5 miles from the centre. His venue for the volleyball is another 5 miles, so it's about 7 miles across, and he said he's going to walk to get to the venue for his volleyball match at 9:30. So we very quickly come up with the idea of taking him in a car after sunset the night before and putting him into a hotel with his coach so that he would be there in the morning, played his volleyball game. He then stayed there until sunset the next night, and then we took him back to his accommodation venue. So this was a bus, went about schools. It was full of leaflets and information and all the details about the visiting teams, the sports. A couple of famous people: Alex Hammond, who was the First Minister at the time, Alec Ferguson, or Sir Alec Ferguson, at the time supported us and put himself in a video that we could show to sponsors. We had working groups that were set up that involved people from the community as well as officers of the city to do with accommodation, transport, catering, finance. People were involved in the fundraising and the costs, and obviously the volunteers. We've kind of covered this in terms of community involvement. Schools get involved, school clubs. Universal Connections is for the unemployed. The group of unemployed people came and wanted to help us out, and people who were looking for jobs and were on training schemes, they came and worked for us as well for the games. As part of our legacy, we decided it would be carbon low to zero. So we tried to offset the carbon emitted from all the flights and all the transport that was used in coming to our games. So we planted trees and we fixed peat bogs. We specified recycled materials. There was no plastic bottles at all in any of our games. We had energy saving measures in all the buildings, etc., etc. We had some special events in the lead up to our games that were tagged with an ICG banner. Glasgow was hosting the Commonwealth Games in 2014, so we had strong links with their organising committee who came out to watch what we were doing. Seems a bit strange, Commonwealth Games, ICG, but in actual fact the logistics are something similar in terms of the international theme. In terms of the wider health agenda, we linked into the health service, got people involved in it with a view to explaining about sport and the benefits, and having the older people who were coming as volunteers. We were then trying to get them involved in some of the activities for the elderlies in all the sports centres and swimming pools. And we had a health conference where delegates who were coming or coaches who were coming to the games could come slightly earlier and take part in the conference that was linked into the games. And the volunteering legacy, a bit like was mentioned this morning, since 2011 we now have 750 signed up active volunteers in our city. We have a group of employed active schools coordinators whose job it is to recruit volunteers to help them support the delivery of physical activity in the schools. And also our volunteers are recruited through existing club links. All our volunteers are checked by the police. I don't know what happens in other cities, but they're all checked to make sure that they're of the right calibre of person to work with our kids. Screening is carried out so that we know exactly what's happening. And we have a volunteers awards evening where we tell the story of all the good things that the volunteers have done throughout the year, and we pick some winners to receive awards from the city. That's it. Logistically, I'm a logistics expert. I'm a logistics guru. I was telling Sam, I organise golf events, I organise fundraising dinners. When I was a teacher, I took kids to Belgium, to France. I just organised things. So I was a kind of a natural fit for this, and this is what the council decided, that for 3 years of my life I would be involved in this. And since then, I was then asked to become involved in the Technical Commission, and it's just an amazing experience. But it's also an amazing experience for the kids who participate. I still bump into people who came to the very first games in 2000 who just say, "Oh, do you remember?" And they start to tell you a story about something that happened in 2000. So we had children in Lanarkshire, probably from poor backgrounds, because we always picked the best athletes. Some cities go to participate and to do the cultural exchange. Some cities go to win medals. I'm afraid we always try and win medals. So we pick the best athletes we can at no cost. So we had people from poor backgrounds in Lanarkshire one day, and then 3 days later they're at Niagara Falls. When we were in Hamilton, Ontario, we took them all to Niagara Falls for the day. So how would that ever happen without sport? And I think, just to finish, we've got a kind of 4-minute video of the games, quite a bit in the beginning about the opening ceremony. The opening ceremony is supposed to show a bit of your culture, of your city, of your country. You'll see the empty stand waiting for the athletes to fill it, so don't think, there was hardly empty there. There were only seats that were empty. But also we had 800 dancers from age 6 to age 18 who had practiced separately in about 6 different dancing schools, who came together on that night for the very first time to perform on this football pitch at the opening ceremony. So I hope you enjoy, hopefully, the DVD.
And now I congratulate and tell all the people here in the stadium, the 45th International Children Games 2011 in Lanarkshire are open.
This is the closing ceremony. It's West Cornwall. Just got to pass the flag to the next city. And the torch.
I appreciate very much all our friends here in Lanarkshire who did a wonderful job with this outstanding 45th International Children Games. Wherever I went and met people, they know about International Children Games, and this is what we never experienced before. Lanarkshire is a real good spot for organizing world-class sports events. These two councils have deserved the gold medal for presenting outstanding International Children Games. And I want you to give a big hand to show these people what wonderful games they organize. All your sportsmen, all your athletes, coaches and head of delegation contributed to this wonderful event. You have shown wonderful achievements, great sports. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful final evening and see you next year in Korea. Good luck, goodbye, and all of you enjoy this night.
That was the closing ceremony, and the fireworks were the kind of final thing for all the kids down at Strickley Park. So that was Lanarkshire 211. Happy to take any questions if anyone's got any.
Thank you very much. Then I have a question for you.
Okay.
Maybe if you can come step forward.
Sorry?
Can you come step forward, please? Yeah, thank you. You're dressed very special today.
Yeah.
Could you explain to us what it represents?
It represents you don't go outside when it's windy. Okay, you have to stay inside. It's the traditional outfit, the kilt from Scotland, where you either wear a tartan that denotes your name, which this is not, but it's called the Flower of Scotland tartan. So it's just national dress. If there's a black tie event that you would go to with a dinner suit and a bow tie, then we would put a bow tie on. So rugby events, I'm sure you've seen them, football events, everyone wears kilt. And national dress, some people like wearing it, some don't, I do. and this is for keeping your money and your keys. And this is for fighting with someone we don't like, whatever. So yeah, traditional costume. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
National dress.
And so you wear it more often? It's not. Okay.
Every day.
Yeah. Okay. So how often? Is it weekly, monthly?
No, special events. If I'm at the games, always opening ceremony, closing ceremony, weddings, maybe half a dozen times a year. Not maybe watching the football. Scotland play Slovenia in the World Cup qualifiers. You come to Scotland on the 17th of March next year. I will be wearing my kilt, watching it, and then I'm coming to Slovenia to the return game on next October, and I will be wearing my kilt. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We don't have an award for best dressed lecturer, but if we had, you would for sure have won it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see a question.
Yes, I have two
Yeah.
questions. The first is,
Wait. For the viewers of the live stream.
I have two questions for you. The first is, how much was your budget for the whole games? And the second is, how much have to pay one participant for fees?
We thought the budget would be £2 million, which is about 2.3, 2.4 million euros. The actual budget works out at £1.78 million, about €2 million, because we managed to save some money and also attract some sponsorship. So the commitment of the two councils, North and South, was that they would fund up to £1 million each. So we fell within the budget. So cities who host the event need to find money, of that type. But the other thing that's not included is that I think I mentioned that officers of the cities, that was part of their remit, that was part of their job. So all the sports centre managers and all the development officers in the various sports, all the bus drivers, all the catering staff, all the people in schools, as part of their job they had to deliver those games. There was no extra money. So, and in terms of cities who want to compete, as Igor said, once they arrive in the host city or in the host country, then there's no cost. But they pay an entry fee of €400
For accommodation.
to be a part of ICG.
For the whole team.
For the whole team.
For the whole team.
Yeah.
Because we're a volunteer organization and we have some costs, and this is the only money we get for some traveling around.
When I took the team to Hamilton in 2000, one of the so we had 78 teams all paying ICG, not the city. ICG €300 or €400 each. So every team. So the cost to the team is, you saw everyone had the same tracksuit, the same training kit, the same outfits, same bags. So the city, by fundraising or getting sponsorship or by raising the money in some way, shape or form, each team comes dressed like an Olympic team. So the city has to fund that. But in terms of the actual athletes, certainly our athletes don't pay anything. They used to do some fundraising. But in 2000, the cost for my team to go to Hamilton, Ontario for 9 days, and at that time it was like 50, we had a full football team, boys, girls, athletes, swimmers, was £40, like €50. €50 to enter, which is why it became very attractive, apart from being out of the office for 9 days over in Canada for me. But it just was mind-blowing that a host city would pay for everything once you got there. But that's what people do.
That means that the full costs for boarding and lodging is going on the organization?
There's no cost for what, sorry?
That means, when I understand it, that the whole costs for boarding and lodging for the participants go on the organization.
Yeah. Yep.
It's an
Yeah. So we were only invited because we were Hamilton, or else we would never have found out about the games. So when we hosted the games, our cities are twinned with cities all over the world. So we get to invite them. And then, as Igor said, if you've hosted the games, you get the first chance to apply to compete in the games. And then it's open to all the cities who have already competed previously. And it's on a first come, first served basis. So you can only do so many competitions in 3 days. So for football, it tends to be 16 teams, 4 groups of 4, sometimes 4 groups of 5 over the 3 days. So the first 16 cities who want to enter the football tournament, as soon as they're in, it's closed. Same with volleyball, same with basketball. There'll be a certain limit on swimming because all the people who organise tournaments in all these various sports know how to get through a 3-day competition with a certain amount of people involved in it. So a team can come with 4, just 4 or 6 volleyball players and 1 coach. And that's a team. It's up to each city as to how small or how large their team is.
Okay, it's all clear now? Okay, good. Yes, quickly, because we're running out of time.
I just want to ask whether did you cooperate with some local board, tourist board, or some museum to create some program for children or for their parents?
A program for the
Tourist program, like you said, you mentioned that
the tourist.
tourist board or tourist organization.
Yeah, we set up packages so that if a team wanted to stay on for 3 or 4 days after, then we arranged that, but we wouldn't pay for it. As soon as breakfast is finished on the last day, and we take them to the departure point, then after that it's a cost of the city. But most cities do that. You know, they bring the kids, they give them pocket money, they let them spend, they take them on day trips. But sometimes there's just no time. Most events are over the 3 days. Some events like golf, it's just a practice day, and then an 18-hole golf tournament, and then a free day. So maybe on that day, the golfers could go and visit somewhere with a coach. But that's at their cost.